It's my absolute honor and pleasure to welcome Chanel Dickerson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dana, for having this relevant conversation, a conversation that's still near and dear to my heart. Well, I have to start with saying I decided to be a law enforcement officer when I was 9 years old. I engaged with the law enforcement officer in my community, and I knew that I wanted to be an officer. And I was born in Danville, Virginia, and we had one African-American police officer on the entire police force in Danville. So now I was 9 years old, and I decided that I wanted to be his partner. That didn't happen because my mom moved to DC, and I started at the Metropolitan Police Department as a police cadet at the age of 17.
So what is that entitled? Like, what does that involve with being a police cadet at 17?
I know, right? Well, I have to tell you that members of the Metropolitan Police Department, when I was in the 11th grade, they came and did a job assembly at Eastern Senior High School in Washington, D.C. And so what that would entail is my senior year of high school, I would go to high school for a half a day and the police academy for the second half of the day to learn the laws of DC, to get different experience, and then eventually matriculate into a police officer at the age of 20 and a half. I ascended the ranks. I knew I always wanted to be a chief of police. When I was 17 years old and sitting in that assembly, I said to my girlfriend that I convinced her to join the police cadet program as well. I said, oh, I'm gonna be the chief of Washington, D.C. And she said, I have no doubt, right? Back then, and we're still friends today. So I ascended through the ranks and I retired last year in June as an assistant chief of police in the nation's capital.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And the rest of the country, we met you as assistant chief of police. And I wanna say, and correct me if I'm get the year around 2017, when you started the hashtag Missing Girls DC social media campaign. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, almost, but I was a commander then. And I can just tell you a little bit of how
Yes,
my career actually like spiraled, because I spent most of my rank as a sergeant on the police department. And that was a rank that was near and dear to me because I was a first line supervisor. But in 2014, July of 2014, I was a detective sergeant. Okay. By March of 2018, I was an assistant chief of police. So anyone that knows anything about rank structure and law enforcement, there was the rank of lieutenant, a captain, and a commander before I became assistant chief of police. In April of 2016, I was promoted to captain. But by December of 2016, I was promoted to commander, and I was tasked with overseeing the Youth and Family Services Division. So that division handled missing persons cases, children and adult missing person cases. So that's where, December of 2016. And so I kicked off the campaign, honestly, unknowingly kick off the campaign in 2017, bringing awareness, January of 2017, bringing awareness to missing children of color.
What is it that you found that said, okay, I took this office in December. What numbers, what information, what did you discover in that month to where you're like, hold on, this is urgent. I need to do this now. Because 1 month, you got the holiday season, you have people, your colleagues may be on vacation, like that sort of. What did you discover in that time frame where you're like, there's a sense of urgency here, this has to happen now?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, because you talk about the holiday season. I was promoted on the Friday before Christmas. So Christmas was that weekend. I had plans to visit my mom out of town. I was called in, it was promoted and saying effective immediately, you're charged with this division. So I kind of thought I probably would go and enjoy the holiday and then come back after the holiday, like most people do, and just jump right in. Right. Well, that did not happen. I got a call that whole Christmas weekend. The first call was a family member out of state was concerned about her sister. And unfortunately, we found her sister deceased inside of a car, right? Then the second case was an 11-year-old that was reported missing, and her parents suspected that she was the victim of sex trafficking. And then the next day, there was the call about a yoga instructor who was leaving her home to go to a Christmas party and was later supposed to go and join her family out of state the next day, that was missing. So I came back in town from Christmas and drove to her murder scene. So out of the 3 calls, 2 of the women were found deceased, and we were able to locate the 11-year-old. So that's what started off like my first couple of days as commander of Youth and Family Services Division. And that week didn't stop. I saw little girls of color, African-American little girls, being reported missing at an alarming rate. And I knew during my course of my career, we've had missing person cases, and majority of the missing persons are located or return home within a short period of time. It was averaging like 3 days. But I knew a lot could happen to a young person in 3 days. And I just saw the number. And what I saw that alarmed me the most was the discretion that detectives had in releasing a flyer of the young person to the media.
And what was that discretion? Do you feel like it was related to their economic background, their ethnic and racial background? Like, what was that discretion you were noticing?
Well, with the discretion, I felt like implicit and explicit biases could make the decision of that discretion, right? It may be their social economic status. Some could look that a young woman or young girl was missing multiple times within a short period of time. Well, her disappearance, there was no sense of urgency anymore on her disappearance because they said, oh, she's been reported missing several times, but they didn't understand the grooming process, right? It's a process before the young girl is introduced to sex trafficking. They're promising her a better life. Is young people in foster care system or who live in impoverished neighborhoods, they were preyed upon. And I knew that because I grew up in a neighborhood like that in DC. And so I wanted to make sure that I could standardize a process that everyone had to follow the same process. And then that removed any type of biases.
So you're creating this process, and then you launched your hashtag campaign. What made you go to social media?
Oh, well, I have to really be honest with you about this. Some people will be surprised. I did not have a social media account at this time, not at all. But I knew a lot of my family, friends, colleagues use social media, and they all talked about, you know, how that was a good way to get information out to majority of the population. And so I started using that hashtag. Well, actually, I don't think I started using the hashtag. I think what happened, it went to our communications department. And then when they were disseminating the information, the hashtag formed Missing Girls DC. So I was not disappointed at that at all because we got a lot of calls about our missing girls. We were able to relocate them with their family members. So it was huge success in it, but it was kind of bittersweet because it created this hysteria, and I wanted people to understand the urgency, but I didn't want them to think that girls in DC were only missing by someone in this white van. I wanted them to know that it could be your neighbor. It was people in their families who were sex trafficking them. So I just wanted to have that broader conversation to understand what the issue was and look at it from a holistic approach to see what conditions were some of those girls leaving home, because I don't use the term runaway. I think that runaway has a negative connotation. And anytime you classify the disappearance of a young person as a runaway, you're telling society that they're not valued. So it warranted a bigger conversation, and that happened as a result of the hashtag.
No, that absolutely happened as a result. And you're right. We watch so many movies, you know, and we have this perception in our mind, like this is how it happens, or this is why it happens. And you created a conversation and a space to have a conversation, to take a step back and say there are so many circumstances, and it's so important when these children are reported missing that whomever's investigating, whether it's in DC or across the country, take a step back and treat each case in a very special way and in a very unique way, and look at it in a very unique way to really get to solving where this young person is. When you decided to go to social media and start the campaign, did any of your colleagues try to talk you out of it, or what was the sentiment at work? Like, are you really going to take this to social media, or did you feel like you received a lot of support?
No, initially I felt like I was just stepping in and doing my job. Anyone that knows me know that I take my job seriously. I say that mediocrity does not live where I live and doesn't work where I work. And anyone that knows me and that works with me know that we're going to go in and we're going to do the best job. Because when people interact with me as a police officer, I should leave them in a better situation than I found them, because most people call at the most chaotic moments. And I just went in with that same mindset that if it was me, if it was someone in my family, how would I want a police officer to treat them? So I just went all in until some of my colleagues talked about that I would get demoted, like, because it made so much, it got so much attention that some of them, they were on social media and was like, oh, a position is going to come available really soon because someone at where I work is going to be demoted soon. So yeah.
And that's, I find that fascinating because you're just doing your job.
Yeah.
You're stepping out. Social media is the way to get information out these days. It's going to travel at a rapid global pace. You had celebrities talking, you had influencers talking, politicians, major media outlets such as the New York Times and the Post were covering you and the initiative and everything that you were doing. Why do you feel, and of course we're only speculating, that people felt you were going to lose your job if it's helping to get the message out, and it's a positive message? It's like, we need to find these young people. And how are we treating young girls of color? And how are we choosing who gets the press and who doesn't? Why do you think that sentiment of you're probably going to get demoted or you're going to lose your job? Why do you feel like that was there?
Yeah, because normally government doesn't step forward and say, we have this problem. Mm-hmm. And that's what we were saying in the city, is that we have this problem with missing young girls. And we're putting it out to the community and asking the community for help in locating these young people. And I think people looked at it that way and say, okay, anything good, come out of this. But I knew that I was doing the right thing. And Chief Peter Newsham, he was my chief at that time. He had promoted me to commander and tasked me with leading Youth and Family Services Division. And I just remember one day, and he probably does not know that the impact that his words had on me that one day of being the chief. Yeah. He saw like the stress and the exhaustion in my face. And he said, it's going to be okay, Chanel, you did the right thing. And hearing that from my boss was huge for me, because I had heard all of the conversations happening on social media and throughout the department that I would, be demoted or be fired for bringing this awareness. And just to hear him say it, I was like, oh, okay. Well, he understands the issue, and that we need the community's help and other DC government agencies help in combating this issue.
What were those days like for you when you would go home? Did you ever did you rest? Like, were you able to take care of yourself, or did you find like you were just constantly going when you weren't, at the precinct, when you weren't doing press and you were home? What were those moments like for you?
Well, my departmental cell phone never stopped ringing. It seemed like that I probably got 4 hours of consistent sleep when I could sleep, because my mind was racing. It was racing because there was like a media frenzy over what was happening. And I knew it was a good thing, but it was just trying to get the word out. And I wanted to get the word out. So I'm balancing getting the word out, but wanting people to understand this is still important.
Right.
Because, sometimes if you explain that it's not this white van that's abducting young girls, and then people would say, oh, well, that's all it is, so I'm going to go back to life. And I wanted to say, no, it may not be that, but it's happening in your backyard. There were plenty of evenings of tears of just because some of them didn't always end. It was sad endings sometimes. Yeah. And so I just had to deal with all of that secondary trauma, but then be able to put on the face and put on the uniform and show back up at work like, nothing ever happened the day before or the hour before, because that's what the public expected me to do. And at some point I wanted people to see, Chanel Dickerson as a human being, the person that if you cut, I will bleed. And through all of that and all of the interviews, I talked about, I think that one of the journalists maybe asked a question about what advice would I give, to a young person to keep them from being in this situation. And I said, stay at home. But I don't remember the question. I don't even remember providing that answer. But people were angry at me for making that comment because they believe that I was saying that little Black girls didn't have the right to leave home and go out and have extracurricular activities at school and do all of the things that other people said. But that was not it at all, right? It really didn't make sense for me to have launched this campaign and now I'm saying, stay home.
No, it's tough. People don't realize, look, I've made many flubs and mistakes myself. And you don't always get the space or the chance or the opportunity to say, no, that's not what I meant, or it was an accident, or it was a mistake, or let me clarify. And just as quickly as social media can share that message in a positive way, they can share it in a negative way as well. So I completely understand that sentiment. When did you realize you were going viral? When did you realize everyone's tweeting, celebrities and everyone's paying attention and you're trending?
I want to say maybe I want to say March or the end of February, because my communications director reached out and he said, oh, the New York Times want to interview you, the Washington Post and Fox 5. I mean, it went from one station, Univision. It was so many different stations that were requesting an interview. And my colleagues that had social media was forwarding me clips from it. Even my council member's office was reaching out because he had celebrities that was reaching out to their office trying to see how they could help DC in the missing girls issue.
Did your colleagues who had some negative thoughts and feedback early on, did you notice that their opinions and reactions towards you changed once social media and the celebrities and influencers were on your side?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, not really. Not those colleagues. They were just still waiting for it. It's like they were waiting for an axe to drop that never did. And even my colleagues that were my peers, they were just saying, you're doing the right thing. Hold on. Like, it's just a news cycle. It will go away and people will realize that this is something we do all the time and we're committed to bringing our young people home. And it went from 1 week to the next week to the next week. I mean, it kept growing. And those same colleagues was like, keep your head up, Chanel. It really is the right thing. Eventually something good would happen out of this. And the mayor created a task force. So she brought in other government agencies and non-government agencies to work together to come up with a plan of not only like locating our missing children, but looking at their living conditions at home. And we had the school system involved. Like, we just looked at the whole child and their family to see what was happening in that household and that they need other services to stop them from leaving home and being victimized.
So you've launched the hashtag, it's going viral. You're now able to put different processes in place, different individuals in place. What were the results? Tell me a little bit about some of the things that you were able to do in terms of processes and individuals that you could get on board. And were you able to find many of these missing youth? Like, tell me what the outcomes were.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. We were able to find over definitely 98% of the missing person cases in the district are solved or closed. And so that was good. But I told you my concern was deeper than just locating them, because some of the young girls came back and they were branded. So that means that there was a predator who had them and they were the victim of sex trafficking. And the largest barrier for me was trying to get the young person to understand that he or she was a victim. And so to give me the information so I can hold the perpetrator responsible. And so I went around the city to all of these community organizations because I wanted to talk to their young people. For our summer jobs, I went in and got on their calendar to come through just to talk to them. And I learned that they wanted adults to listen. They didn't want me to come and say, oh, well, when I was, this age, this is what happened. I needed to look at what were the things that they were experiencing at their age and try to combat it from their perspective, not mine. And I'm telling you, I learned so much from them about apps, like their apps with symbols. And if a young girl put a symbol of a cell phone, that meant that she would have sex to pay her cell phone bill. Or if it had like hair, a picture of someone with, a fresh hairdo or nails, or even a bed. Bed meant shelter, that they would do these things for shelter. So I learned so many different things of how some apps with a calculator that looks like the regular calculator on your cell phone, if it has a plus sign in the corner, that app have all this hidden pornography behind there. Yeah, it was a lot of things that I learned from that. And so we had to address it from that perspective. And we brought in non-government organization that actually helped with human trafficking. So as a result of that, Department of Human Services, the mayor increased their budget. They were able to hire additional staff to handle the needs of the young person and their family. So MPD, the Metropolitan Police Department, and DHS, Department of Human Services, had a morning call every day to look at every child to discuss, like, are they in the system? Are they truant? Are they getting some type of assistance from the government? So it was a lot of things that I thought that was very beneficial that came out of that.
Do you know if any other police departments across the country mimic some of the things that you did? Has anyone from a different police department, say out of state, reached out to you for any advice or insights?
Oh, that happened a lot, actually. We shared our policy. We shared our SOP, the standard operating procedure that I created at the time, with other police departments. Now, some of the larger police departments were able to implement some of the processes that we implemented. But if you think about it, a small police department where their detective are investigating sexual assault, robberies, and homicide, and a missing person, then you can see who would get the priority. But we were definitely a department that was worth emulation by our other departments.
You received awards, you've received social media flowers, if you will. Do you realize how big of an impact you have made? Have you yourself congratulated or patted yourself on the back for the work you have done for your community?
Not at all.
Why?
Oh, see, that's a tough question, right? It shouldn't be a tough question. I think I look at it as, would it be boasting, right? And they're real lives. Like, if you've seen the things that I have seen, like, I could never take a win, if you will, when I know that I lost a life, right? And so it's hard for me to look at it and say, of all the young people that I was able to reunite with their families, and then all of the ones I know that are still out there. But since I retired, and that is how it was on the job, but since I retired, I've really been able to take a look at, like, my life, my career, And I've seen so many different things happen as a result of it. I mean, HBO had a documentary. I met Natalie and Derica Wilson of the Black and Missing Foundation. And honestly, I had never heard of the Black and Missing Foundation until the campaign. And so they have been doing remarkable work. So when I look at it that way, to say that there's a conversation that continues to be had, because initially, probably by the end of that year of 2017, I kind of felt that it wasn't at the forefront anymore, because it was no more calls from celebrities, asking to help. And I was just looking at like some type of program that was beyond government, that could be in the community in Washington, D.C., where young girls could have, had a place to go to be, to feel valued and have confidence. Because when you think about a change agent, you can be a change agent in an organization as large as mine. But what happens when the next person? What happens when your successor takes over and they don't have the same belief that you have? They don't have the same drive and the same passion. What happens to these cases? So that's why it was important for me to talk to the community, to say, we're your police department. You demand, when your loved one is missing, is certain things that you should demand from the police department, not only in Washington, D.C., but everywhere.
As a parent or a guardian or someone who has a young person in their life, what questions should we be asking? What apps should we be looking for? Like, what should we be, the conversations and the steps we should take in a proactive way? What should we be doing?
Well, I think as a parent, you should definitely listen to your young person, just to find out, what's going on in their lives. Or are there new friends? And the friends that they have, like, are they talking to people or online with someone that you don't know? Mm-hmm. Because social media and the gaming is a big one that a lot of young people and a lot of young boys are actually meeting grown men on the gaming apps, and then they are victimized. There are dangers, but we have to live our life, right? We can't live in fear, but we just have to prepare our young people to know and trust your gut, that intuition, that something is not right. Like, everyone is not your friend. People are looking at people outside. No, they're in your house. They're in your house already. Look at the cell phone, look at your laptop, look at your desktop or the gaming system. That's how they're coming into your house. We are worried about whether our doors and windows are locked, whether we have an alarm system. It's all these other things that we're putting in place to protect our young people, but we're not recognizing really the danger that's right in their hands. And then oftentimes, as soon as a young person get in trouble with their parent, they normally take their phone, right? They take their phone from them, and now they can't use their phone, but you have people who are giving them phones. Like, that's the new thing. Yeah, you may take their phone and there's someone who has replaced, or they may have it already, even with their phone. So you really have to pay attention. Like, you are the parent. I tell parents, like, you are the parent or you are the adult. Like, certain things, you can't have things that I don't have access to. Like, just think that open communication, and we can't make our young people feel that even if they make a mistake, they can't come to us, because I saw that is what happened when they make the mistake. We're just so harsh on them that they don't want to come and tell us about that mistake or the next mistake, because they know what happened the first mistake. I mean, we want people to give us grace. I mean, even as adults, we don't always get it right. And I think that we have to learn to talk to our young people from that perspective.
As a neighbor or as a community member, what should I do if I notice something or something doesn't feel right? Is there anything that I can do?
Yes, I think that you should definitely talk to your local police department and just see what do they have in their department that will help missing children or sex trafficking. Just get involved, because like at DC, we have a DC Human Trafficking Task Force. I know they have that in a lot of cities across the country. Like, look at that. But if you feel like a child or someone is in immediate danger, then you call 911. You look for things that the child is not dressed appropriately, like that it doesn't match the adult that they're with, and they won't make eye contact. They're looking down. Sometimes they're at hotels and you see them have several cell phones, or they're using multiple credit cards. It's things like that. And I would rather for someone to err on the side of caution and just call law enforcement and let them come in and investigate the situation, instead of just saying like, hey, it's probably not anything. Yeah, it's probably something. Like, if your gut is telling you that this is more than meets the eye, then it probably is.
What if someone were to say to you, but you know what, Chanel, our community and many communities of color feel this way. We don't have the best relationship with the police, or we don't have the best relationship with a police department. And they may not feel comfortable, like, but it's in this situation though, God forbid, if someone you know is missing or you feel like they're in danger, that's your resource to turn to. That is your local police. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it saddens me because I am an African-American woman and I was a police officer for over 30 years. But we've all witnessed it, and we all seen how some police officers have interacted with Black and brown communities. So I cannot say that it's not appropriate for people to feel this way, but we have to hold police departments accountable. And that's what I say, rally together as a community and say no more. If you see that your police department is not taking your issues seriously in your neighborhood, we're stronger in numbers. And I think that most people count on us not rallying together, right, like in the community. And we normally don't go anymore to the neighbor's house to say, hey, I'm noticing this with your young person. There is a car that pulls up at the corner, at 3:00 every day, and your daughter or son go and get in this car. It may not be anything, right? But it may be something. And I just want to let you know, most people, I'm telling you, we've seen it in crimes and homicides and shootings and carjackings. People will continue to walk. They will not turn around to look or right or left to see what's happening. And I think so many of us are like desensitized from all the things that are happening, or looking at it just saying, it's none of my business. Oh no, it is your business, because it may not be on your doorstep today, but tomorrow it would be there. And I think about like one of Mamie Till's quotes when she talked about when things happen to any of us anywhere in the world, it better be the business of us all. Because she looked at her life first and talked about she had a good job, a good apartment, and she had a son. And when things happen to Black people in the South, she looked at that and said, that's their problem and not mine. And oh boy, how wrong I was. And I'm kind of paraphrasing what I remember of it. Right. But every time, like, I think about that, like, that's so huge. That's a big lesson for us. It's a big lesson for us to look at and say that it has to be our business.
Absolutely. You retired a year ago. What are you up to now, and what led to your retirement?
What kind of led to my retirement? Well, back in September of 2021, I decided to join 9 other women to file a class action lawsuit against the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. for sexual harassment, discrimination, hostile work environment, retaliation. And when I first heard about the 9 other women, I was the highest ranking female police officer at the Metropolitan Police Department. And it took me probably about 3 months to decide if I was going to join the lawsuit, because being at my level, I did notice that we had issues that needed to be corrected inside of the department. But I knew the retaliation and the microaggressions and all the things that would happen to me at my level if I did that. I knew that I could be demoted, like for real this time, like with the missing girls. I knew that hard work would actually pay off, but I looked at stepping up and speaking out against discrimination was something that would be frowned upon, and I could easily be terminated or demoted as a result of it. So that is what prompted me to retire in June of 2022. It just became a lot for my mental health.
Yes.
The blacklisting, all of the retaliation that happened with me. It was the microaggressions, you know, the gaslighting to make you think that things are really not happening that are happening. I just chose me. I chose me, and to save me and my mental health. And then I started looking at the agency. And although I started at 17, that I looked at the agency to say, is this the place I really want to work? This is how you treat me, right? That you don't look at that this is an issue that's affecting 10 Black women inside of a major city police department that has a Black mayor and a Black chief of police. And we're not going to create a task force or something together to say, let's get to the bottom of this. And that's the reason why I decided to leave. I had hopes to stay to 2025, but I have no regrets. I have no regrets about my decision. I started my own consulting business because I wanted to decide to do, to write my next chapter, right? And do what I felt like I needed to do for me and on my own terms. So I have speaking engagements. I'm now working on a book project titled Uncuffed Voices. Her story is my story. I am with 18 other women in law enforcement, current and former women in law enforcement, sharing a piece of their journey in law enforcement to inspire the women who are currently in law enforcement and those who are thinking about joining law enforcement, because it is a noble career, but we do need more women in law enforcement and in leadership roles. But we also have to make sure that if we hire more women, that they're in an environment free from discrimination. Like, that is what's important. So that's what my journey is now, is to sound the alarm, because I see that these lawsuits have started popping up all around the country now after that. And even in DC, multiple lawsuits have been filed. So I said, here I am once again, right? Once again, but behind like a hashtag, behind something that's saying, oh, no, you have to stand up for what's right. And if I took an oath to protect and serve, and it's not just to protect and serve when they think I should.
Chanel Dickerson, thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for your dedication, and for your spirit, for everything that you're doing currently, everything you've done throughout your career. I just want you to know that you are appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.